All right, so I just now saw the comments on no sound, so that's good. So let's take it from the top. Now we've got sound, right? Great. The little bars are jumping. I know we're doing good here. All right. So for those that missed, I apologize, but we're going to cover this. So we are 10-8 and in service, which means we're here to safeguard the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve, and we do that in an effort to make people's lives better. I appreciate everyone staying tuned while I mimed the first part of the show. But we're going to cover a lot of topics tonight. We're going to cram them in there. There was a lot on social media this week about one case in particular, but it was, what are the police doing? Why are they not doing this? Why isn't there an arrest? What information is being released? And so I wanted to cover topics that we typically cover on the show. We've covered them in the past, but it's what is it that the police release and how we release it, and then how a case gets filed. And that's going to include a discussion on reasonable suspicion, probable cause, and then it's also going to talk about, we're going to talk about how we file a case with the DA. More so because we want to cover what are the police responsibilities versus what are the DA's responsibilities in there. Just a quick 30,000 foot level so you understand the different roles and responsibilities there. And then because I missed it last week, we're going to cover a section on sextortion. Sextortion is where people may use a photo of you or a video to try to extort money from you. And what we've been seeing is it usually happens with juvenile boys, and they see someone that they're maybe romantically interested in online. They build an online relationship. That unknown person gets our local resident to send a picture or video or something similar. And when they do that, they'll use that photo then to force them to give them money in consideration for not exposing that photo. And so we just have a little video that we want to play towards the end there. As always, we want you to download the FEMA All Hazards Guide. This is for those infrequent events that are very, very high risk. And right now we're covering wildfire. So in the FEMA Hazards Guide, there's a lot of information there, but particularly we're focused on wildfire right now. And we also want you to sign up for Community Warning System. This is how you will stay notified. Right now we're talking about being prepared. But we also want you to be aware of what's going on in Community Warning System, along with Nixle and Zonehaven are some of the resources that we have that we keep public, and we will make sure that you're kept in the loop as far as what's going on. Also, download the guide. This is the Contra Costa County Residents Guide to Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation. This guide is what we're going through right now, and it has a lot of useful information. And today we're going to talk about the go bag and what you put in it. So if you can, as the audience participation part of this, if you had to leave your home right now, what would you want to make sure is in that go bag? And the reason I ask this question is I'm going to throw up a list of recommended items, but as times change, everybody has their own unique needs. Maybe you're going to put something in there that we all haven't thought of. So I would ask that you kind of throw that in there. All right, crime update. We're going to go through communitycrimemap.com. You can go there direct. We upload there several times a day. We are aware that there has been some glitch to it, so I've got a trouble ticking in on that to make sure that the information that's being output to the community is accurate and good. So we will work on that. But you can go there. You can get crime information, sexual offender information, and pretty light week, although I have to say not the accident that we would prefer to see. On May 2nd, it was an auto versus pedestrian, and the pedestrian was hit, and they caused minor injuries, and that was at West Linda Mesa at Verona Avenue. It's on the west side of Danville, near downtown. And ultimately, we were able to locate the driver, and after they fled, and we released them to their parents. So we've got that one solved. But it is a reminder, we are out there doing a lot of traffic enforcement. If you've noticed in the past 3 or 4 months, there have been a lot more enforcement on a lot of our roads, whether it's downtown, Camino Task Corridor, Camino Ramon. We've been doing a lot more enforcement. All right, crime. So not a terrible week for crime. May 1st through 7th, we had 1 burglary, 3 thefts, and 1 vehicle theft. On the first, we had an attempt. Someone went into a bank, went into Wells Fargo on 300 Diablo Road, and attempted to. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Heritage Bank. Heritage Bank on the 300 block of Diablo Road, and attempted to cash a check. Well, by entering that structure with the intent to commit a theft or felony, that qualifies as a commercial burglary, and that person fled prior to police arrival. So that case is continued. On the 3rd, we had a theft of a debit card from a man while he was, think about this, while standing in line at the ATM at the Wells Fargo on San Ramon Valley Boulevard. That card was later used outside of Danville to withdraw cash. On the 5th, there was an RV stolen from Sycamore Circle, and the 5th was not a great day. We also had a bicycle stolen from Ontario Elementary School, and then we had a theft of a purse from a vehicle as the victim loaded merchandise into their car at Costco, and then the credit cards were later used in San Jose. So that is kind of one of those evergreen reminders. We do patrol that Costco a lot, very frequently with our volunteers and police service. Those are the VIPs. They'll drive a car that looks just like a cop car, only it has the volunteer patrol on there. We also do it with our regular patrol officers, and we do usually keep a silent sentry down there as well. So we are engaged with Costco to work to reduce the crime in that area. But what happens is, and we've showed it before, maybe I'll cue that video up from the Trader Joe's again, but what'll happen is people will put their purse or their backpack, they'll put it in their car. Then they'll go to the back and they'll start unloading the groceries. And then maybe even like push their cart back to the cart corral. And at that moment, someone will sneak really low, open the car door, take the purse and leave. And it's really hard to spot. And a lot of times when we see the parking lot video from these events, there's a lot of people moving around. It's just, they're very good at it. It's really hard to spot. So our recommendation is lock the purse in your trunk, lock it in your car if you're going to put it in your car and load the groceries, or simply keep it very secure on your person, maybe with a crossbody on that. All right, I'm going to check the chat and see if there's any questions here. Okay, I think we've got some good ones. This is great. So Wendy says, go bag, passport, photo albums, computers, hard drives, chargers, animals, and meds. But probably the most important thing, she says, chocolate chip cookies. So I can imagine if I'm, and Wendy's has a good point, because a lot of times we think of the necessities, the things that we absolutely need. But if you've ever been in a stressful situation or crisis, oftentimes it's that one thing. And I do remember that we had an officer that was in a pretty stressful situation, and all they wanted was a Diet Dr. Pepper. Like, that was the best thing they could have. Everybody's got that one thing or that item that they have that brings them comfort. And so that's very, very good to put in your go bag, because we know we're going to be in a stressful situation. So make sure you include those things. All right, we're going to talk about information released to citizens. Like, what is it that we push out? So you see all the time, we talk about Command Central or communitycrimeapp.com. That is the website that we use to push out date, time, location, crime type. And so you're always getting that from us. We also put it on our website. We call it the blotter, where you can just, in tabular form, that means in list form, you're going to get all of that information as well. The only things that we exclude from there are family offenses. So usually domestic violence is out, and then also sexual assaults or crimes involving children. So we want to keep those out because we have a duty to protect people's privacy. So we want to make sure that we cover that. All right, so let's talk about that. Why do we release info? So we release it because we want to conduct activities in an atmosphere of openness. We want to build as much trust with the public we serve, that's you, and we know that the way we do that is by having an open and engaged platform. We try to balance that out with the need to protect people's privacy and the need to do our jobs in a constructive way. So what is it limited by? It's limited by legal constraints. The law, the penal code, the Public Records Act does tell us exactly what we can and can't do. The need for us to preserve evidence, to prevent interference with a criminal investigation and protect the constitutional and statutory rights of any person. So let's talk about the preservation of evidence. If we haven't finished an investigation and we start putting out information, details of a case, and then we go to interview a witness, there's a strong argument to be made that they may simply just tell us back the things that we've already put out. And so it makes it hard for us, if we do that, to confirm the validity of information, right? But if they can confirm things that are not yet known to the public, then it gives us a better shot to say, hey, that's probably good information. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to bias the public in any way about the results of an investigation. So we try very hard to keep it very simple as to what happened. There was, a good example would be officers responded to a burglary at this location. We're investigating it. And we'll get into whether or not there's an arrest made, what information goes there. But usually that's all you'll get. You'll get kind of the circumstances, and we'll kind of hold there. So let's look at what you might actually see. So on that initial report, we're going to put what happened. If there is a call to action, we're gonna put that information out there. So if there's a warning, if there's someone that's free in the neighborhood that poses a threat, we're going to let you know that. If there's someone that ran onto a school campus, we're gonna let you know that. You're probably going to get an initial alert on that. And then if we need your help, and oftentimes you see that right here on the show where we may publish a photo and say, hey, this is someone that we don't know. It's someone that's committed a crime, and we need your help in identifying a suspect or a lead. After that initial report, we're usually fairly radio silent. We're usually not putting out updates. This is resource intensive for us. We throw a lot at it. This could be coordinating with other agencies. A lot of it is computer checks. A lot of it may be dumping cell phones and determining what's on people's cell phones and where cell phones were at. And this is probably the biggest part for us, because this is where law enforcement is working on behalf of the victim, the person that's been victimized. So it is the most important thing that we do. Right? We always say that public safety is everyone's responsibility, but we're the ones that you pay full time to do it. So if you've been victimized of a crime, we feel that it's our duty to act on your behalf to find out the facts of the case. And that's what we do. And we do it without bias. There may be several theories that are working on a case, and we're going to work to get evidence to either prove or disprove each one of those, because we want to make sure that we know exactly what happened in a particular case. Now, at the end, so let's say that it's reached its final position. The investigation is complete. The case is closed. There's nothing left to do on it. This is where typically we would present the case to the district attorney's office for review. We tend not to say that we file charges with the DA, because we don't actually file charges. Filing charges is when you file a criminal complaint. Simply what we're doing is we're presenting the information to the DA so that they can review it and they can make a determination on whether or not to file charges. Now, if charges are filed, this is where we are very careful not to try the case in the public. And what we're trying to do is not sway public opinion one way or another to the case, so that we can make sure that there's an unbiased pool of people out there that, if asked to, could be a jury in the case. And what you'll see is the information is really going to be limited to the actions that law enforcement took. We filed the case with the DA. An arrest was made. Those kind of things. You're not going to see the play-by-play. And that kind of goes to the investigation. Typically in the investigation, it's not like calling a football play. We don't say, he's at the 45, the 40, the 35, the 30. He's at the 20, the 10, touchdown. That's not how information is released. It's not appropriate, and it really is not professional on our part to do that on typical cases. Now, if it's an unfolding event where information has to be released to the public because there is an overriding public need to know, then absolutely we might adopt that principle for that particular case. All right, so in that very first one, what type of information might you see in our release? So maybe we put out a Facebook post, or maybe we respond to the press. Maybe the press calls us and says, hey, we heard there was a burglary that happened at a store downtown. What might we put out on that? Well, we're going to put some of the facts of the event. So we will confirm, yes, there was a burglary. It occurred downtown. If there's a public safety message, this is when you'll see it. Avoid the area, shelter in place. If we need your help, this is typically when we do it. We start putting out there, help us locate this person. Sometimes the call to action is actually evacuate or avoid the area. And so we want to make sure that you're doing that. And in a case of a disaster, it could also be, take some action to secure your property. Maybe if it's going to be a high wind event, we might give some specific guidance on that. And then also a policy statement. And this comes down to what it is that the police department's doing. So what are we doing? Okay, we're going to investigate this case. If it's a disaster, hey, we've got these evacuation points and we need you to evacuate, or we need you to shelter in place. And we're going to talk about what the police department is doing in that situation to serve you. Now, the law requires, and we follow the law requires that we release more information if a person is arrested. So let's talk about that. So let's say there was that burglary downtown. We end up making an arrest and we book them in jail. So what might you get from us upon request? And we don't just release this on everyone, but if it's requested, this is what we're required to release. So what you'll see is the full name of the person, the occupation, the physical description, the time, date, location of the arrest, and the factual circumstances surrounding the arrest. But again, this is not playing out the probable cause. It'll simply be that, person A was arrested for, committing a burglary at this location. We're not going to, it's not a Discovery Channel special. Again, we're very careful not to try the case in the public sphere. We realize that the courtroom is the place for that. If the person was booked, we're going to give the time and date of booking. If they were cited, we'll say that they were cited out. And the location the arrestee is being held, so which jail did they go to, the amount of bail, if any, and then all charges the arrestee is being held on. And then if they ended up getting released, we're going to talk about the date and time that they were released from custody, and whether or not it was bail or on a notice to appear. All right, so that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how we release information. So I want to see if there's anything in the chat here. Okay, we've got more updates. So John says, John and I are pretty similar on this one. Passport, computer, and photos. So I think it is important, and I kind of joke when people put photos or photo albums. I think Wendy put that too. That's actually pretty important, right? So you want to have like maybe photos of family, maybe photos of your pets, and I wouldn't rely on your phone. It's great that all of our photos, you can have 80,000 photos on an iCloud account. But if that's not working, then you don't have those photos. So it's good to have photos of the people that are with you and your animals and pets. So should you need to look for them, you can do that. Also, I keep my computer with me, so I'm a lot like John on that one. So Sue says, hopefully someone was able to identify the person that beat up the guy and loaded his groceries into Costco the other day. So Sue, we did put out some information to the press on that, and I'll kind of maybe summarize it real quick. We put out that the officers responded to the call of a battery, so a fight between two people, and we responded within about 3 minutes. After that 3 minutes, we immediately recognized and started an investigation. That investigation was completed Tuesday. We presented the case to the DA's office on Tuesday, and the DA's office declined to file charges, and that's kind of where the case is now. So that case is officially closed. So Wendy says, how frustrating it must be. And I'm going to apologize. My screen just went a little dark here. Let me see if I can get it. Okay. All right. So Wendy says, how frustrating it must be when you do all the work and then hand the DA and then no charges and people blame the police. Well, and Wendy, I there's certainly cases and actually let me do this. Let me pin that question because I've got a quick segment coming up here on reasonable suspicion. Basically, I'm going to talk about the burdens of proof and the differences between those. So Marissa O'Reilly says, I'm so over that Costco parking lot. I park at Marshall's and just walk. So Marissa, I'm 3 boys at home. We shop at Costco quite a bit. I kind of joke I'm in that almost 50-year-old club, and most of my clothes come from Costco now too. So I'm there all the time. My personal preference is I just come in the backside and I park along that back wall. It seems like I can get in and out, no problem. It's pretty easy. Yeah. So and here's we're just all over the board. This is great. So Wendy says, or when you're old and you have albums with photos that are not digital. So this is a really sidetrack. So my 16-year-old, when he was about 13, started his business, and his business was to scan people's photos. And all he did was cut the rate of Costco and any online by about 10 cents a photo, and would just do it. So we've digitized all our photos, and it's pretty fantastic. And some of these, photo aggregators, the places where you dump the photos digitally, they'll actually identify by face all of the pictures. So it's a really good way to make sure that those don't get lost. And let me remind everybody, I don't do political statements on here. So I know there's some comments specifically talking about one thing, and I don't want that to be necessarily the story. That's not the purpose of what we do here. So I'll put that, but let me do this. We'll talk about what do we do when we file a case with the DA, and then I'll cover burdens of proof, and then we'll talk about probable cause and reasonable suspicion. All right. So filing a case with the DA, the first part that has to happen is law enforcement has to complete a thorough investigation. If we don't complete a thorough investigation, then there is no case to be presented to the DA. Now, oftentimes that case, as it goes through, we may do an initial assessment, right? Maybe we get a statement from 1 or 2 people. And so we kind of form an idea of what is maybe happening with that case. And then as a case moves on, maybe you're taking in DNA evidence, maybe you're taking in photo or video or maybe you find additional witnesses, or on an area check of a neighborhood, maybe you find additional cameras, right? Or maybe you find digital media sources or social media sources that you can find, and you start to build a case. And cases sometimes end up 180 degrees different than where they started. And that's why it's very important for us when we're doing the investigation portion to make sure that we stay unbiased and we just try to uncover as many facts as we can, because those facts will lead us in a direction. We don't need to push a case in a direction. We just need to make sure that we're following good investigative practices and that we're lifting every stone that's reasonable to lift to find information that we need to find. Once we do that, then we make a presentation of the case to the district attorney's office, and then ultimately the DA reviews it and determines whether or not there should be a filing. So with the presentation, it's not magical. All we do is we try to give the DA everything we have. So we give them all of our handwritten reports that contain all of the information. It's our personal observations. It's going to be our interviews summarized, and it's going to be any investigative steps we took and information that we uncovered. We're also going to include any photographs. We're going to include any, right now we wear like body cameras, so we'll include all of that video. If there's video that we were able to recover, like say if that was that downtown burglary that we were talking about, if we have video of the burglar inside the building, we're going to turn that over. So we try to turn either the physical evidence itself or a photo or some representation of that evidence. A good example is drugs. We don't bring drugs to the DA's office and go, look at the drugs. We keep that booked in a secure location, and we bring them a photo so they can see what the drugs look like. And then they also get the toxicology results from the lab that say what the drugs actually were. So that's what we do. So the DA then looks at all that information and determines whether or not to file a case. But here's the issue. I have a great deal of respect for the attorneys that work at our district attorney's office. I think they do a great job. I've been a witness in cases where they have been the deputy DA that is at court, boots on the ground, working hard on the case. And I know that the men and women of the district attorney's office work very hard. I've, as an investigator with the police department, I've filed a lot of cases personally. So I know there are good people that work there. So let's talk about the burden of proof. This is, I think, an interesting pyramid. So let's look at it. Okay, reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion is the first level of proof, and it's very broad, and there's a lot of room for doubt in reasonable suspicion. So let's take a look at reasonable suspicion, and we're going to look at this specifically as it pertains to detaining a person and then probable cause to arrest. So we'll talk about both of those, but let's look at reasonable suspicion. Now, this is actually from the post-learning domain. So this is what we teach brand new officers. This is cut directly from their book. And it talks about a consensual encounter. That's essentially when there is no authority to detain someone or tell them they're not free to leave and that sort of thing. This is one level above that. And it says you must have a reasonable or factual basis that we can articulate in order to lawfully detain a person. This is when you tell a person you are not free to leave. So what does that actually look like? So it's reasonable suspicion is when a peace officer has enough facts and circumstances present to make it reasonable to suspect that criminal activity is occurring. So there's a crime taking place, and the person being detained is connected to that activity. So reasonable suspicion has to be present if we're going to detain someone. So let's just take the example of, a burglary. Let's say it's in the middle of the night, it's 3 a.m, and we happen to be out, and believe it or not, this actually happens. Our officers get out of their cars and they walk commercial areas, and they do that so that they can see if there's someone where they shouldn't be. Let's say they walk around behind a building and they see someone with a crowbar in their hand right at the door like this, right? And they give that look. Well, that, businesses are closed. He's got what looks like a burglary tool, and he's at an area where he would appear to not have any reason to be there. So that's reasonable suspicion. So we can detain that person, which means we can tell them they're not free to leave. We can put them in handcuffs. If they have bulges or bulky pockets or things like that, or areas where we believe weapons may be concealed, we can search them. And so, but we have to have reasonable suspicion. So belief that a crime is occurring, possibly a burglary, and that person holding the crowbar by the door is somehow connected to that crime. So that's the first burden of proof. So let's look at the second burden of proof. All right, so the next one is probable cause, and this one is one that we use. It's actually from the Constitution, and it talks about probable cause either to arrest someone, so that's to physically seize a person, or to search their property. And so let's take a look at what probable cause is, and this would be the next burden. So let's again, we're going to kind of think about that burglar with the crowbar, and we're going to use that as our example. All right. So reasonable or probable cause, this is a level above reasonable suspicion. So this is an arrest. This is when someone's taken into custody, which means they are not free to leave. But not only that, they're also then transported somewhere else, either to jail, maybe the police department where they're interviewed and then released on a citation. But what is probable cause? So probable cause for an arrest is a set of facts that would cause a person of ordinary care and prudence to entertain an honest and strong belief that the person to be arrested is guilty of a crime. So this is not somehow connected. This is the crime has occurred and they are guilty of that crime. Probable cause is required before an arrest is made and is based on the totality of the circumstances. So facts required to establish probable cause may include direct investigation or reports, circumstantial evidence, and secondhand statements from reliable sources. And as you go down that list, that's when you start having to put the case together, right? So if you get multiple people telling you and you can corroborate it with some physical evidence, you don't have to firsthand witness it to have cause to believe that that event occurred and that person is guilty of that event. So let's look at that pyramid again, because this is where, as you get past probable cause to arrest, now it's where you're getting into higher burdens of proof. And this is where, if you're trying to file a case and you're trying to get a conviction, you can't convict someone in court on reasonable suspicion or probable cause. The burden of proof is much, much greater. So let's look at our burden of proof pyramid. So preponderance of evidence, that's more likely than not. That's typically the level of evidence you'll see in a civil case. That's why you may see a criminal case doesn't go forward, but a civil case, there may be an award in a civil case. Clear and convincing evidence, that's high probability. And what they have to have in a criminal case in order to find a person guilty, and this is usually what you'll see in the California jury instructions, this is what is read to the jury, is you must find beyond a reasonable doubt. And this requires eliminating all reasonable doubt. This doesn't mean that there's not, aliens couldn't have come down and committed that crime for that person. It just simply means that there is no reasonable doubt to believe that that person did not commit that crime. It is beyond that doubt. And that is the standard. And not to speak on behalf of or for the DA, but or the DA's office, but that's the standard that they use to file. So it's very possible that a few things could happen. Like, say this burglar, right? It could be, a lot of times people might see that crowbar in the burglar and think, oh, I'm catching a burglar in the act. Well, as we continue to do the investigation, again, it's important for us to be unbiased. So we ask questions like, hey, why are you here? And believe it or not, we've had it in the past where this is my business. My keys are, I broke my key off. I'm trying to get in there. I'm trying to bust off the lock. And then we look at the ID. We look at the ownership of the business. Sure enough, it's that person's building. So reasonable suspicion to believe that person is now connected to this crime has gone away. So our detention has gone away. And since it didn't go past probable cause, we're certainly not arresting this person. There's not beyond a reasonable doubt. So the case isn't getting filed. Now let's say, the person says, oh, this is my buddy's place. And, this is Bob's Fish Market, right? And we're like, no, this is, one of our fine restaurants in town. And he makes up a whole story that just doesn't go anywhere. He's got no business to be there. We've given him opportunities to explain why he's there. It just doesn't match up. We talk to the business owner. The business owner says, I don't even know who that person is. He's got no business being in my property. Absolutely not. And so now we've reached probable cause, right? And then we go in and do that. Now we continue that investigation and we're starting to build more and more information. Maybe we get some cameras. Maybe we find his car. Maybe in the car we find a cell phone that's got GPS coordinates to it. Maybe it even says like, hey, go break into this place. So now we're getting more and more evidence. And now we've gotten to the point where it's clearly beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a very good fileable case for the district attorney to file. So that's kind of a potential progression in how that may occur. All right, let me see if I can check some of the comments here. So Wendy, we'll see if he still has his scanner. So I appreciate a lot of the comments that are coming through, but when it comes to like specific cases or things like that, that's not something that that I speak to on the show or actually professionally at all. And that really goes to the fact that my role as the chief of police is not to be in the political field. It's simply to be the servant to all of you and make sure that law enforcement is being carried out and public safety is being carried out in a way here in town that provide all of you the best possible service. And I need to make sure that I stay separate and apart from the political discussions. Yeah, so Wendy has a great question. This is Wendy. Thank you for asking this because I should have actually covered this. It's like you're a great sidekick. So Wendy says, does the DA ever tell you exactly why they are not charging besides we don't have enough evidence or you did essentially hand over and that's it? So there are a lot of different reasons. Kind of the easiest ones are lack of sufficient evidence. And lack of sufficient evidence could basically mean that you provided us evidence, but that evidence doesn't rise past beyond a reasonable doubt. Or you provided us evidence. There's a clear picture as to exactly what happened, but the facts in there are not a crime, right? Or not the crime that's alleged. And so it could be that. And we've had that with some cases that tend to be political or maybe very sensitive. We will send to the DA even though we don't have a crime type on the top. And we look because we know we have a lot of facts. We know what happened, but it doesn't quite fit a crime. And so we'll actually send it to the DA's office, and this is something they do. They will do at our request, and they've been good partners in this, and they'll review it. And they'll look to see if based on the facts, and they'll usually come back with one of two things. They'll say, hey, you know what? Yeah, we agree. We agree that there isn't enough evidence to show that any crime occurred. Or they'll say, you know what? We recommend that you, and this is where they say it's an RTA or a return to agency. Well, they'll say, hey, we want you to take these additional investigative steps because they might produce criminal intent. They might produce evidence of that show that there was a crime that committed. And so that's kind of the back and forth that may happen to show that the crime committed. The other is sometimes they'll come back and, believe it or not, they'll say, you know what? The witnesses in this case or the victims in this case are uncooperative. And so we can't file based on that. And so when you've been a victim of a crime, that officer, and it seems like a silly question at times, but if your home was broken into and we don't even know who did it yet, that officer will typically ask you, if we're able to locate the person that did this, do you want them prosecuted? Because if the answer is no, there's not really a reason to bring it to the DA's office because they're going to look at it and say, well, they were not going to assist in the prosecution. There's no reason to. And what I'm happy to say is here, unless there's an exceptional circumstances, all of you do a great job of saying, no, I do want to prosecute. I do want to hold that person accountable. And I think that is part of what keeps our crime rate exceptionally low here. So Sue has a personal experience. And I know we've talked about that one, Sue, so maybe that's a good one for offline. And then Eric, you're talking specifically about the one case that happened this weekend. And, we don't, when it comes to why in a specific case the DA doesn't file charges, that's not our information to release. And that would come from them. Okay. All right. So I don't think there's anything left in the chat, but I don't want to forget my last one. So this is, if you're a parent, this is actually huge, huge, huge. It's very important. And I don't want it to be missed because, actually I take it back. We have to go over the evacuation, go back. I almost missed that. You guys got me. All right. So let's look at our screen here. So it's the California Wildfire Preparedness Evacuation Guide. You can download it. Links in the description. So here is the go bag. So we had some suggestions of photos and passports and chocolate chip cookies and all kinds of good stuff. I'll tell you, I do have a little thing with Wendy here as far as the snack. I make sure that I've got some Cliff Bars in there. I love those things. It's a good snack. It keeps me full for a long time. So I do enjoy those. But we want to say, what is it that is going to go in your evacuation go bag? So if you look at the top left, that picture is of a NOAA weather radio. And so that'll give you an AM radio. It'll also give you the ability to pull in information from the NOAA radio channels, which is where we can broadcast over large ranges of distance information. So when cell phone towers go out, when all that infrastructure is gone, that AM radio or the NOAA radio is going to be a great source of one-way information. We're going to be able to put that information out. And so some of the other things you want to consider: always have a bunch of food in the upper right. One of the things I put up there, and this is essentially those meals ready to eat. I've had those in the military. They're, believe it or not, some of them are disgusting. Most of them were pretty delicious, and I don't know if that's because I was 21 years old eating them, or they were actually good. But I did like the spaghetti. The ham slice actually wasn't bad. I know people didn't like that, but some of these are getting by these private companies are getting to be pretty good. I've tried some of the oatmeals. I've tried some of the stews. They're really good, chock full of calaries, and it doesn't take much in the way of those to keep you full for a long time, and they last for like 20, 25 years. So buy them now; they'll last you, nearly a lifetime. You want to have a whistle. That's a good way to signal for help. If you get stuck in an area and you might need to signal for help, that's a good way to do it. A first aid kit. People always forget this one. I think because we always assume there's one in the kitchen cabinet or in the trunk of the car, maybe, then they forget it. And if you've got special, if you've got like diabetes or something where you need special medication, you're going to have a contingency plan for that as well. Important documents. This seems to be less and less important over time since a lot of things can be recovered digitally. But, certainly you want to have identification, you want to have cash, you want to have credit cards, those things that you need to survive with light packing. Flashlight and extra batteries. I have a ton of these all over the place. I make sure that I keep them, especially now with LED flashlights. They'll last a long time on just a few batteries. The things to help keep you sanitized, those moist towelettes, I've got them in my backpack right now. And I think after we had kids, I think that was one of those things that we wish we would have known before that. But we keep those things all over the place. Garbage bags, hand sanitizers. The cell phone with the charger, again, in my backpack right now. That's not my go bag, but that is the number 2 bag that's going to be with me if I leave. I've got the cell phone chargers. I've got all that info. And then you want to make sure you have blankets and pet supplies. So what does it look like for pet supplies? Make sure you have a carrier if you need it for your animal. You want to make sure you have collars and ID tags. We recommend getting your dog or cat chipped. We actually have a chip reader here. So if we had to go through and start rounding up animals, we're going to be able to return them to the owners sooner. Have a lot of food and water. I know it says 3 days. Personally, I'm going to blast that out to about 7 days. You don't know how long you're going to be without, and you really want to make sure you have that in your home. Personally, I have about 2 months worth of food and water. So make sure you get that lined up. Medicines, you really want to make sure you've got at least a few weeks of medicine. Figure out how you rotate that so you can get it. And I think we talked about this earlier, but a picture of you and your pet, a picture of your family, so that if you have to have people help find someone, you've got the resources to do that. And this is actually instead of the garbage bag, I actually use a lot of those plastic grocery bags for these go bags, and it works pretty good. And I think along with the chocolate chip cookies and the Kind Bar, it talks about the familiar toys. Make sure you have toys and treats. And that actually goes for our kids too. Have something to keep them busy. Otherwise, it's going to be, it can be a nightmare. All right. See if there's anything else in the chat here. So Sue says, I use rechargeable flashlights. That's great, Sue. Good job. The one thing I'll say is if you're going to use rechargeable, have a bunch. So my police flashlight that's right on the counter over there, if it's the rechargeable one, it lasts me about an hour, right? Much higher power though. Much higher power, lasts an hour. The one on my bicycle, that'll last up to 3 hours on a charge. My mag light, I've got 3 different settings on it. It's a D-cell flashlight, and I can get up to 85 hours on it. So it lasts a long, long time. It's just lower power. The other thing I do is there's these crush lights. So there's lights that you can crush, and you can expand them, and they're little LEDs, and they've got a solar panel on the top. And I just leave those. Actually, I leave them right next to my bed so I can throw them in my backpack if I need them for something. But I just leave them there. They're charged up, ready to go. And then you can get a couple hours worth of light out of them just from the solar panel if you leave it out on your dashboard or something. So they're pretty effective lights. All right, on to the Sextortion. So let's play this video, and we can all kind of listen along. But this is really something that's going to affect your teens We don't see it as much with our adult population, but it is something that could easily affect our adult population. I think a lot of people will get that spam email or text messages that says, I've hacked your phone, I've taken video of you in, on the bathroom or something, and send me money, right? Those are all bogus. These ones are real in the fact that someone builds a relationship with one of our teens online. Our teen then sends them some compromising photos, and then they use that photo and say, if you don't send me money, send me this, I'm going to post this photo on your Facebook, Instagram. I don't think kids are on Facebook, right? They're going to post it on the Instagram, and they're going to do all this stuff. And so let's listen into this video real quick and see what our friends have to say.
Sextortion is when an adult coerces or entices a child to produce a sexually explicit image of themselves and send it to them over the internet. Once the offender gets a single image of a child, typically they'll use that image to coerce the child to produce more and more under threats of sending that image to friends at school, names on a contact list, or even the parents. Any child can be a victim of this crime, whether they're on the honor roll, whether they're a star athlete, boys or girls, but we have to encourage them to make smart decisions when they're online. Individuals who are conducting this kind of activity have multiple online profiles. They can pretend to be a 16-year-old boy or girl. They can pretend to be anyone, especially in the online gaming environments where they're offering cheat codes, they're offering access to coupons, or to get further advance in a game. So it's really important to have your guard up, to know that if someone who's contacting you saying that there's something, there's a good chance they might not be. They're looking to get access to you, they're looking to talk to you, and they're trying to encourage you to produce imagery so they can use that imagery to coerce you to produce more. Many of our victims tell us that they feel that there was no way out. They thought they were going to get in trouble. It's really important for victims to understand that they are not in trouble. This is an adult who is in trouble, who is coercing them to do this kind of activity. So it's important to reach out to a trusted adult or to law enforcement so we can end that cycle of victimization. Gone are the days when we told people to keep the family computer in the living room so that the parents could keep an eye on them. Now with kids with tablets and smartphones, many times they're having to make those really hard decisions when they're not under the watchful eye of their parent. So having those good conversations about what's appropriate behavior is more important now than ever.
All right, so I apologize. Someone had said there was no sound, so I did crank up the sound. If you can let me know in the chat if it didn't come through. If not, what I'll do either way is I'll put a link in the notes to that video. It is something that's good. If you have a relative or something, just send them that link. It's a 2-minute video, and it will really, I think, kind of drive the point home that this is happening. And I'll tell you right now, it's happening here in Danville. It doesn't make communitycrimemaps.com because it's an offense involving a kid, so you won't see it there. But it is something that we see. We're not seeing it in record-breaking numbers or anything, but frankly, it's very sad when we see it even one time. All right. So I'm going to check the chat and see if there's anything else in there. I don't see any. I do see one on YouTube. I'm looking at that. And it seems more of a broader political statement than something that we're seeing local. So I appreciate that, Joe. If you'd like to talk about that, you can give me a direct message. I'd be happy to give you a call and we can talk directly about that. All right, so that is it for the show. We are we're 10:10, which means we're off duty, but we're always 10:8 in service to all of you. Please go down to the links, download those 2 guides, Wildfire Guide and the FEMA All Hazards Guides. You won't regret it. Print them out, cover it with your family, and then just chuck them in a drawer and have a good summer. And let's hope the Warriors beat this 3-1 kind of thing they're doing here. We need to win this one, right? All right, so go Warriors, and we're 10-10. Have a good night, everybody.